Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Our underwriters for Art in the Air are Valparaiso University's Brower Museum, regional art patron Mary Levan, and our landlord Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments. Thank you for your generous support. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Thanks to Greg Kovach, WVOP's station manager, and Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operations at Lakeshore Public Radio. Art on the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m., plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That's Breck, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event, exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck, BRECH.com, or through our Facebook page. Art on the Air is always looking for financial support. We'd like to thank our current supporters. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, Esther and I especially would invite you to become an underwriter of this program in particular. We have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA. You can find out support information there. So don't just be an Art on the Air listener. Become a supporter or underwriter in whatever amount you're able to do so we continue to bring you great content and this great local programming. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. And you'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. I would like to welcome back to Art on the Air Spotlight Tim King, who's the Executive Director for the LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra. He's going to be talking about the upcoming season and maybe some of the things they've just done. Welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Well, thank you, Larry and Esther, for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. The show must go on, as they always say in the musical and theater world. So we have presented a concert at Friendship Gardens in Michigan City in August, and we presented a concert at Fox Park in LaPorte in September. We also had our Who's Your Star, which we live streamed for the first time, which was a little scary for this old man, but
it went well, though.
It went well, yeah.
The 30-somethings held my hand, and it was okay. So we got through it, thank goodness. It was a fascinating situation where we just had to use part of the orchestra, mostly a combo, but reached more people than ever before. Thousands of people this time who watched it instead of coming to the Civic. So I think we've kind of convinced ourselves that when we go back to live performance at the Civic, we're probably going to stream it too.
I hope so.
That's a great idea.
For grandmom who lives in California or whatever. So we're going to do that. So we're really happy with the way that turned out. And we just put online on www.lcso.net our educational video and education guide. Normally we do sets of concerts. Today, it's always the second Wednesday in October, but obviously we can't do that this year. So we've put on an educational video, about a 45-minute video, which we're very proud of. And we really want to encourage elementary educators 2 through 5 and music elementary educators to take advantage of the video and use it in their lessons plans and classes, as well as the education guide that accompanies it.
Is that the Drayton Children's Family Concert?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. That is correct. Normally there are 3 live concerts that we have, but we couldn't do that this year. But we are going to open our season on November the 7th, 7 p.m. at the Civic Auditorium. Because of the pandemic, we can't have nearly as many people as we'd like. So there's very few tables that we can put on the floor. very few seats that we can sell up in the audience. So the tables are gone, but we still have some seats left in the balcony if people would like that. It's going to be called the Great American Songbook. Of course, your listeners probably know what that means, and that's the classic composers of the 20th century. We're really concentrating on three. It will be Irving Berlin, George Gershwin, and Cole Porter, Indiana native Cole Porter. So basically, the entire concert is going to be those three composers. And conducting that for us is our fifth music director candidate, Dr. Christopher Fashun. And Christopher is the director of orchestras at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, just up the road. So he was supposed to be conducting us back in April, and of course we had to cancel that. So we've rescheduled it to this point in November. So if you would like tickets to that, you can go there and to our website at www.lcso.net, look for Great American Songbook and get the tickets. Plus, we haven't been for sure yet, but we think we're going to stream this one too, because we think there are still people out there that are still very hesitant. And I don't blame, I get that. Although we are going to follow every safety protocol like we always have before. So we haven't made a firm decision on that yet, but that's our hope, is that we can.
I vote yes.
Yes.
I hope. Well, thank you. Well, ever since we did Who's Your Star, that's really kind of what took me over the hump there, was that it can be done and it still is worth it as far as the quality and stuff like that is concerned. So I think that's going to be the plan. We're going to make a decision later this week. So hopefully November the 7th with Christopher Fashun, the Great American Songbook at Civic Auditorium.
What rehearsals been going during this time? How do you handle rehearsals?
Well, we haven't rehearsed yet for that, but we're going to be rehearsing at New Prairie High School for our first rehearsal. And their band room is so large that they do indoor marching drills, if you can believe that.
Wow.
So it's a new space. It's a new space. And so they have given us permission to use theirs as an indoor marching space. As a rehearsal space. So I'm confident that we're going to have enough room to be able to social distance everybody. And of course, we'll wipe everything down before and after. And then we're going to do the rest of our rehearsals at the Civic Auditorium the week of the concert. We're going to have half the orchestra on the floor, half the orchestra on the stage. And again, everybody's 6 feet apart. The tables are all going to be 6 feet apart. And the people sitting in the balcony are going to be 6 feet apart. So that's why we can't have nearly as many people. And that's why we think the live stream probably is going to be a good idea.
Now, you have 2 other concerts scheduled this season, so tell us quickly about those.
We do. We have another concert in March, the 14th, which will also be at the Civic, which is another reschedule. Beethoven's belated 250th birthday now, with our 6th and final music director candidate, Dr. Will Berlin. And then our last concert is April the 17th, where we'll be inviting Gary Wado back. And Gary is a native of LaPorte who has this incredible history on him with conducting orchestras and operas all over the country, and has yet to come back to LaPorte to conduct. So we're going to welcome him back finally after all these years.
And any plans for Who's Your Star next year? You're going to try to do it live or streaming?
Yes, we are. That's the plan right now. Auditions are in March, the 20th and the 21st, I believe, or 21st and 22nd here in LaPorte, and to have it the second Saturday in September, hopefully at the Civic Auditorium.
Very good. Well, this is our spotlight with Tim King of the LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra. You can find out information at lcso.net. Find out all about their concerts and their season. Thank you again for coming on Art on the Air Spotlight, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Tim.
Well, it was a pleasure to be with you too as well. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM.
You have the right to vote. Vote because others pave the way. Vote. Don't just ignore this freedom and throw this right away. Vote. You're blessed to live in a country. Vote. A place where you can make a choice. Vote. The choice is yours, my friend, and we need to hear your voice. If you want to be heard, voting is the way to do it. Our democracy Get out and vote this election. Vote. It is the most important right. Vote. You have a choice that's before you. Get out and use that right.
And next on Art in the Air, we have Charles Steck. He's enjoyed a long, storied career as a musician, educator in the region. He's extremely active as a performer, teacher, clinician throughout the area, holds a Bachelor of Music Arts and a Master of Music from Valpo University, and is involved with many, many things, which we'll talk about, and is currently teaching at Valpo University, among other places. Hey, Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Great to have you.
Welcome.
Well, we'd like to just kind of go into your background a little bit, both your personal background, where you grew up, where you went to school, high school, college, and everything like that, family, or whatever you want to tell us just about you personally for our audience.
Absolutely. Well, I really haven't strayed very far from home because I was born and raised here in LaPorte, Indiana. Graduated from LaPorte High School. Both my mom and my dad were very inspirational. They loved music. They both had participated in music when they were younger. And my dad, when I was growing up, was a dance band musician. I got to gig with him a little bit. I ended up going to Valparaiso University, got my degree from there, and absolutely fell in love with playing in orchestra, and ended up making that such a big focal point of my whole career, my whole life. When I was in high school, I was very fortunate to join the LaPorte County Symphony in its very first year of existence. I came in on the second concert they ever did, and I played the majority of the years ever since. It's been quite a unique and fun ride for me. I've also had the good fortune of being able to play in that orchestra with my family. My wife is an oboe player in the orchestra, and both of my sons spent time as student apprentices in the orchestra and actually got to play in the trumpet section with me. So it's been quite the family affair for me being part of the LaPorte County Symphony through the years.
So did you start with trumpet in high school and cornet, or did you work your way to that?
I started playing the trumpet when I was 8 years old. My dad had a little dance band, and they would rehearse at our house sometimes. He had a good friend of his who would come over to the house who was a good trumpet player, and I thought that was the neatest sound in the world. That was what I wanted to do. So that was pretty much it. I branched off into other things. Being a music education major, I had to learn to play everything, and I got proficient at a few other instruments. French horn is my second instrument, but it's really been trumpet for me. That's been the whole thing for me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your actual career. You then went into education and taught at the local high school, am I correct?
I did. I actually started out college as a private instructor at the conclusion of trumpet for a few years, conclusion of college for a few years. I was doing a lot of gigging, a lot of dance band jobs of my own, and freelancing, subbing in a lot of the area orchestras, and playing regularly with the LaPorte Symphony. And I ended up in the classroom at La Crosse High School, where I taught high school band, high school choir, and elementary music, and absolutely loved it. Loved working with the kids, and loved being able to share with the younger people the joy of making music, the whole creation process, and love to see kids do things where they could get a little passionate about things. And so I had a lot of fun teaching there, and eventually I moved home to teach at LaPorte High School, and kind of where I graduated. My parents were very encouraging of that. My dad was still alive at the time, and he kind of needed a little extra experience, extra assistance at that time. So I was happy to move home, but spent 22 years teaching at LaPorte High School, where, again, I taught band, I taught choir, music history, music theory, jazz band, marching band. Kind of did it all, and got to see my sons go through the program at LaPorte High School as well. So it was a full circle for me.
What was the name of your father's band?
Oh, he had a couple of different groups. One of them was called the Veritones, a little 4-piece band out of Valparaiso. And my dad was a dance band musician from East Chicago originally. And starting back in the 1930s, and he had one form of band really up until he kind of stopped playing in the middle 1980s. But he always had some kind of a combo around playing wedding receptions or little parties or something.
Do you dance?
Do I dance? The excuse I always told my wife is I never learned how because I was too busy playing. and it worked. It worked.
Who are some of the masters you studied under for trumpet and or cornet? And maybe we'll explain to the audience, I know this, but the difference between the two instruments.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we're recording right now in my studio, and I've got all these instruments around me. I've got several different trumpets of different keys, but I've got a cornet here because I love to play the cornet. So I have a case with antique cornets that were made here in LaPorte that are 100 years old, that are wonderful. The original cornets had such a beautiful dark sound to them versus the more modern trumpet, which is a brighter sound. One of the people who influenced me the most is a gentleman from the region, and that was my trumpet instructor at Valparaiso University, who's still around. He lives in Crown Point right now. His name is Charlie Mann. And Charlie, oh my gosh, he had the most magnificent sound of anybody I'd ever heard. And that's all I wanted to do was find that sound and be like him. And he helped me do that. He helped me really kick this orchestra career off. I also had the good fortune of studying with some guys in Chicago, Greg Fidala. Another influential teacher of mine was a gentleman named Tom Crown. And Tom became better known as a mute maker, but he was just a phenomenal teacher. He was playing with the Chicago Lyric Opera at the time and teaching at Roosevelt University. I loved working under him. Had a chance to work under Luther Didrikson and Vincent Chikowitz for a little bit at Northwestern, and worked with Neil Bernson, who's now in Pittsburgh. I had some quality people who are trying to tell me the right things. I'm grateful to all of them for what they gave me and how they led me.
Is there any favorite trumpet players, famous trumpet players you like, their style? There's a whole bunch out there I like. I'll tell you one of them is, for the steely sound he gets out of it, Maynard Ferguson on the one side. And on the other side, I like the soft sound of Chris Bode. But who are some of your favorites?
Yeah. Well, I love Chris Bode. I've always loved Wynton Marsalis. I have to tell you, an inspirational guy for me is Doc Severinsen.
Oh, yes.
Doc is 93 years old, and he's still doing it, and he still sounds good. And, he does the jazz side of things. He's never been afraid to do the classical side of music either. And he's conducted, and he also is a great model of work ethic, because his success is all about practice. Just the amount of time and the type of material that he does to practice every day made him a career that's going to last really forever. I love Doc. I had the good fortune of meeting and working a little bit with the master of orchestra, and that was Adolf Herseth, who was principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony for 50 plus years. And even today, it's his sound that everybody wants to be like. He was the master and a wonderful man.
Yeah. One of the things I always love with Doc Severinsen is when he did Psalm 150, Praise Ye the Lord, on his album. But the other one is the collaboration he did with Henry Mancini, brass and ivory, and then later brass and ivory and strings. I mean, those were some of those things. Yeah. And of course, you didn't. Maynard Ferguson, I love for his high tones. I especially loved him in the Columbia era. MacArthur Park, I think, is a classic. So, I mean, hearing that. Oh, yeah. But I know a lot of trumpet players don't like his sound either because it's a little showboaty, I guess.
Well, I liked Maynard, and I actually knew a couple guys who played with Maynard. And the thing about Maynard was, whether you liked him or not, he made his mark. And as a trumpet player, you want to find people who have done that. They worked hard and they practice. Basically, they talk about how to continue, how to sustain in this career, and he did that. He was a good guy, and lots of people have just totally learned so much from him. We had a drummer in the LaPorte High School Jazz Festival a few years ago by the name of Stockton Helbing, and Stockton was Maynard's last drummer. And he just talked all the time to the kids about, if you want to do this, this is what the boss would say. He'd say, you've got to practice. You've got to find the way to make things work, and you have to do it, and you can't give up on it. And I love that. Love that about him.
Real quick, I want to say, first time I saw him was at the Happy Medium on Rush Street in Chicago when I was in high school.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, being straight guys, our little fan club going to see him, we walked in there and, you want something to drink? You know, like, we'll take a Pepsi. You know, we were real straight-laced, but yeah, it was great. And then I later saw him at a club called Ratso's, and literally, I don't know if you ever was in that club. It's on Lincoln. It's no longer there. You had the little round tables. You're just like butted up right against the stage. I mean, you're with what we called in theater spitting distance. So it was really great.
Mm-hmm.
So
I got to see Maynard live for the first time. I was just out of high school, and he was in Chicago at the Midwest Band Orchestra Directors Convention, the Midwest Clinic. And so I'm in the ballroom with thousands of other music educators, and Maynard plays. And I'd never heard, I felt like my hair was just being parted by the wind from his horn. It was an amazing sound.
Well, coming full circle, he was doing clinics a lot along with schools, and my daughter got to play with him at Highland High School when he came around there and everything. So it's sort of like full circles.
So cool. So cool.
Well, you are part of so many bands. How do you fit it all in? I look at it and it's like the who's who of who's in the area. It's just amazing.
I'm a busy guy. Yes, I am. It was cool when my kids were growing up because they were part of the music program at LaPorte High School, and they loved it. They do music themselves today. My oldest is a professional trumpet player and a teacher in St. Louis. My youngest is in Indianapolis. He recently graduated from Butler with a degree in music. He's a horn player. And they fell in love with us, and they were willing to follow me wherever I wanted to go. And my friends became their friends too. That was a cool thing about it.
What a great education.
Yeah.
It was. And I there's a group I work with out of Michigan called the North American Brass Company, which is a brass quintet. And we have just done so many cool gigs through the years. But these are all guys who kind of have the same life mindset as I do. And so they became mentors to my children as well. And we kind of did that for each other up there. That's been such a cool thing for me, is watching this come the complete circle for my family as well.
Do your children play other instruments as well?
We started them very early, realizing there was a lot of aptitude. They both started on piano very early. That's the one thing that I did not do. And it's the one thing if I had to do over again, I would do. But both my kids started piano before the age of 6, and they both have great proficiency at it. My oldest son uses that a lot in his teaching. My youngest son is very happy to sit in his apartment right now and sit at a keyboard and write music and use the different electronic programs to record them. So a keyboard is their thing. And they also both fell in love with guitar.
Yeah.
My youngest also became quite an accomplished jazz bass player.
My children did that as well. You know, with piano, it transferred to the guitar, transferred to the cello.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I started, my mom started me at piano at 5 and then switched me to organ. And then I started doing trumpet probably a few years later, and it was like there was just too much going on. So I stuck with trumpet up until about my sophomore year in high school. And then I started doing, when I was also doing theater, and theater just became the big deal. But just a quick side story, my mom always wanted to be some sort of musician. And I said, well, you realize I direct mostly musical theater. I can still read music. I still cut scores. I said, my musical talent is taking that and being able to put it on the stage and interpret large-scale musicals. So anyway, one of the other things you do is we'll talk about the LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra. You are principal trumpet with them, but you're also the interim director as they're going through the director search. So tell us about some of the work you have to do with that.
I signed on. This is the 3rd year of me being in this position. There are several things that I do. I'm kind of making the musical decisions for the orchestra as we're moving forward until we have a new conductor in place. I work with Tim King in particular to create the direction of the seasons for the orchestra, to decide the calendar, decide the programs. There are some programs I have been conducting of my own, I just did 2 programs in September and August with the orchestra. We were able to finally get out and do some things outdoors. And there's a concert in the series called Holiday at the Pops. It's a wonderful holiday program. I've been doing that the last couple of years. So I have some things on my own. Tim probably talked to you about Who's Your Star.
Yes.
Who's Your Star was a program we did in September. It's been around for a long time. That fun program. I kind of plotted the musical course for that. And Alistair Willis from the South Bend Symphony came in to be our conductor. He's done that for the last 3 years now. But probably the biggest thing that I do is I guide the conductor candidates to hopefully have some successful programs. None of the candidates who are coming into audition had any prior history with our orchestra. And so in order to have them be able to do a viable program, they have to work through me so I can talk about how a piece of music may fit with our orchestra, and at the same time guide our people to, especially our personnel people, to make sure that we have all the right people in place for the music that they want to do. And then I do the conducting prior to the arrival of the guest conductors. They are here for a week, and we start rehearsing 2 weeks prior to their arrival, and I conduct the orchestra until they arrive here. So that's just a little bit about what I do with at the interim here.
Are you going to have any vote in the final selection process, along with, I know, the board and things like that make the final determination?
Well, there's a selection committee that we have, and I'm not part of that selection committee by design, mostly because I'm a pretty busy guy, as you guys are aware. But I kind of act as an advisor. Just my observations and my thoughts about how things worked and how to interpret reactions and things like that. So it's more in that role than anything.
Very good. Now, tell us about the city band that you're involved with. You're the actual conductor for that, the LaPorte County City Band.
I am. We actually were able to get a concert in this year, which is exciting. It is the oldest continuous municipal band in the state of Indiana, and one of the oldest ones in the nation. It was founded in 1879. The LaPorte City Band, I became the official director 8 years ago. I followed a gentleman by the name of Jim Burden, who held the position for 45 years. And he actually was one of my band directors when I was in school here in LaPorte. It's traditionally a summertime band. We do concerts weekly at Fox Park in LaPorte. And if you've not been to Fox Park, just a beautiful amphitheater setting where you can look at the sky, look at the city skyline, and look at Clear Lake and see the beauty of the trees and all of nature there, and watch a concert. And so we traditionally do concerts on Wednesday nights, and it's a very typical classical concert band, band instrumentation, and sometimes I get a guest vocalist in. We were able to do a concert in September, and Tim King came to sing a couple tunes with us, and Tim is also a concert tenor. I don't know if he.
No, we've had him on the show, so we're well familiar with Tim.
We love Tim over here.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. So he lit up the audience when he sang the music of the night from Phantom, and then he followed that with "You Raise Me Up," and in typical fashion, the people were jumping to their feet before he was even done with his last notes.
Yeah, he's very dynamic.
Yeah, he's a great interview. We like I said, we've had him on several times. In fact, we interviewed him earlier today, and so
in fact, he mentioned that there's the possibility of live streaming these concerts, which is very exciting.
Yes, he and I are both real quick to admit the fact that we're kind of technological dinosaurs. If I didn't have two sons, I wouldn't be able to talk to you today because I didn't start on Zoom until April. And my sons kind of talk me through everything that I do right now. Because of things we were able to do with Who's Your Star and stream that performance, we are figuring some things out, and it might happen. And as we go through this crazy time right now with the pandemic and all. There are no guarantees about anything. So it's a possibility that we may add more things like streaming as we go on. It's an interesting dimension for us. It would be a cool dimension to be able to reach some people who are not going to be able to come and be with us. So
Yeah.
I hope we can do that.
I think it's an excellent idea.
So tell us how the pandemic has impacted you both personally and professionally.
Well, my standing joke is that before the middle of March, I was driving 500 miles a week to do all my work and my teaching. And the next week I was driving 2, literally, because of all the high schools that shut down, that I was not able to go to the schools and teach. Because that's part of what I was doing was going into the different high schools like Portage High School and Lakeshore High School up in Stevensville, Michigan, and helping out with their brass players. But that ended that. And then literally the week that things started to shut down, we had a guest conductor auditioner in town. He was ready to go. We had a concert that week. And I had to call him on Thursday and say, I'm sorry, we can't do this. We have to close. So we had to send him home. And it was heartbreaking, but we couldn't do that. We couldn't have a concert. So it wasn't until August when we could figure out how to do a concert because we were able to do it outside. And prior to that, the only playing I had been doing, and this was a heartbreaking part for me, I was going to the cemetery and playing taps for funerals for military veterans. And it was such a sad thing for me. That was it. There were no gigs, no concerts, and so it was a pretty big change. And when the symphony was able to get together finally to perform, it was on August 23rd. The last concert that they had done was Holiday at the Pops last December. That's a long time.
A long stretch.
A long time. Yeah. It's been challenging.
Chuck, is there any way that, either you want, I don't know if you want more work, anyone to get in touch with you, like a website or a Facebook page or anything like that?
Oh, I don't have a website. My easiest contact is through Valpo, valpo.edu. I'm on the music department faculty page there. I've been there forever. And so many people in the area, for whatever reason, seem to know me. They find ways to get a hold of me. I'm not trying to be secretive. I've just never really marketed myself. So,
well, if you're that busy, you don't have to. So we appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. That's Chuck Steck, a long-time storied career as a musician, trumpet player, cornet, and even, I guess, French horn player. And we appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. And next on Art on the Air, we have Christopher Fashun. He's an incredibly diverse, versatile conductor and performer, currently teaching at Hope College. He serves as the director of orchestras and music director for the Brazilian Music Ensemble there. He teaches applied percussion, also an instructor of instrumental music, and also, he's going to be a candidate for the LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra to be a conductor and will be coming in there in November. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Larry. Appreciate
Aloha.
Hello, Esther.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. We would like to just start off about, our audience would love to hear about your personal background, especially if you're going to become part of the LaPorte Symphony, but where you grew up, what you did like in high school study, how you got into percussion, just college and everything. So tell us a little bit about Christopher.
Well, my story happens in Wisconsin. I grew up in Wisconsin. Sorry for all those Hoosier and Michigan State and or Michigan fans.
Whereabouts in Wisconsin?
I grew up in a small farming community called Rosendale, Wisconsin. Okay. It's in the Fox Valley near Fond du Lac, Ripon area. And 700 people, small. And when I was about 5 years old, my parents decided that violin would be the good instrument for me to start on. So I was the Suzuki kid. I started when I was 5 on violin, and then my musical life has two personas: one percussion, and the other as a string player. And so those two personas ran parallel for a very long time, and didn't really intersect until much later in my life. So I was a string player but I always had this affinity for like hitting things. and this idea of rhythm was sort of in my bloodstream. And, I was always one of those kids that would set up pots and pans and things in the middle of the floor and pound on them. But for a long time, all the way through middle school, then I added viola when I was in middle school. So I was doing violin, viola, and I begged my parents to let me join band so I could play percussion. And they reluctantly let me a year later. So we started in 5th grade in my school, and I started in 6th grade. And then I ended up playing all the mallet parts because I could read music from my violin playing. And so I ended up playing timpani and a lot of mallet parts. And as I went through high school, I was the only string player in my high school. So I went to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. It was the closest place that had a youth orchestra. And I played there, in my middle school, high school years. And then when I went off to college, I continued to play violin, viola, mostly viola at that point. And I was really had my sights set on being an orchestral violist at that point. But I still kept the percussion thing going just kind of on my own. I'd really never taken any formal lessons, really until my senior year at St. Olaf. And then when I just kind of threw caution to the wind, and I was a music ed major there. And I decided to switch my primary instrument from viola to percussion, and then made my secondary instrument viola. So I graduated, finished school, and I was very fortunate to get a job in a suburban high school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Nicolay High School, and was an orchestra director there for 4 years. And while I was there, I started studying with the assistant principal percussionist of the Milwaukee Symphony, because at that point I was like, I've pretty much taken viola as far as I really want to take it. And I've had some great experiences playing as an orchestral player. I really want to pursue percussion. And so I studied with her. She was actually a student of Vic Firth at New England Conservatory. So I was right off basically like 2 people off from the pedigree of the Vic Firth tree. And then she got me ready for graduate school auditions, and I applied at different places. And then Anthony DeSanza had just started at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Was an amazing percussionist, amazing pedagogue. And so I ended up going there for my master's degree in percussion performance, and which is probably there where I started my love for Brazilian music. And we had in addition to Western percussion ensemble, we had a world percussion ensemble. And for the 2 years I was there, we primarily focused on Afro-Brazilian, Brazilian, and Afro-Cuban percussion. And, Tony was so great. He would bring in all these guests. So I got to work with Mark Lamson, Michael Spiro, and John Santos. And all those people did in residence things with us in our percussion studio. And it was an amazing experience to have those, to just be around that. And then in addition to that, while I was there, we actually collectively, as the grad students and Tony, we discovered California Brazil Camp. So I don't know if you know about California Brazil Camp, but it is like an immersion experience. So out in Cazadero, California, just north of San Francisco. And it's basically they've expanded it now to 2 1-week sessions, and all the teachers are Brazilian for the most part. Mark actually teaches there, Esther. Mm-hmm. He's been on faculty there. And so I went there for 3 years and got all kinds of great experiences there.
Wow.
At that time, when I was a grad student, I actually met my wife. I always make a joke about, I met my wife at band camp, which was really true. I was looking to pad my resume to teach percussion at the collegiate level. And so I just took this gig, and Tony had sent out this email and said, hey, the first one that replies to this email gets the gig. So I was the first one, and it was a summer music camp in Lakeland College in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And my wife she's been a long time choral director, vocal music teacher. She was already working in that area. And as a matter of fact, this is a funny aside story. Our guest soloist for our upcoming concert, Deb Bordeaux, she and my wife were very good friends and taught in different school districts, but knew one another in Wisconsin. And so that's where I met Deb too, at that camp. So our history goes back quite a ways too. So funny story there. But anyway, so I met my wife at the camp there, and then I didn't have any prospects. So we ended up during that period of time, moving to Oostburg, Wisconsin. And she went back teaching, and I didn't have any jobs. So I started my own painting contracting business and did that, which is how I earned money as a grad student. Actually, in the summertime, I worked for a painting contractor, restoring old houses in Madison. And it wasn't but 2 weeks into the semester, or her principal called me up and said, "Hey, could you like be our band director for like a couple of weeks, just to fill in?" And I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, I am not a band director. I'm an orchestra person. Like, I don't know, those two worlds don't cross for me. Well, two weeks turned into 4 years. And at that point, my ears were starting to bleed a little bit. And I was looking to get back into orchestral music. And so I thought, I really miss conducting. I really miss teaching. I'm going to apply for doctoral programs in orchestral conducting. So I applied, and kind of interesting. We ended up in Iowa City at the University of Iowa with Dr. William LaRue Jones, who was the founder of GITSE's, the Greater Twin Cities Orchestra program. And I got to work with him for 2 years. My grad program was supposed to be 3 years, but I was hired my third year. I was hired at Goshen College in Goshen, Indiana, which is sort of close to your neck of the woods. And so after living in Iowa City for 2 years, which we loved, by the way, we loved living in Iowa City. It was great experience, great town, great college town. Ended up moving to Indiana. Right before we moved to Indiana, we ended up adopting our daughter through doing a domestic adoption. And that's a whole nother amazing story in and of itself. But we basically ended up doing all the life stressors, all the major life stressors all at once.
All at once, yeah.
Parents and moving.
Well, that's in retrospect probably a great way to do it, I think, all at once.
Probably giving up the viola also, because, I mean, how many concertos are there for violin and orchestra? And I think there's, 5 that are actually written for viola and orchestra. So not exactly the premier instrument. So
maybe 5 that are actually performed.
Well, yeah, that's true. It just wasn't high on the agenda. So you completed your doctorate.
Yes. And so when we moved to Goshen, I started teaching at Goshen College, where I was the only instrumental conductor there on faculty. So while I was at Goshen, I was the director of the orchestra. I directed the jazz ensemble. I taught applied percussion. I was the coordinator for the music department for the music education program. And I taught or coordinated all the methods classes.
Well, this seems like a pattern I'm seeing with you, doing all things at once. So,
and we loved our time in Goshen. And then, after a while, I was kind of looking at larger programs, larger schools to teach at. And the job at Hope College opened up 2014, I guess. And so I interviewed and was hired there in 2015, where now I teach all kinds of things, but with a little bit more focus. So I teach applied percussion here.
What is that? Well, you want to explain that to our audience, what applied percussion is?
Sure. So the term for applied anything in higher education, what we call this, is basically like studio lessons or private lessons. So I teach basically percussion lessons and direct the percussion ensemble as part of that. And then when I started at Hope, I created and founded the Brazilian Music Ensemble, where we primarily study, it's open to any student. There's no auditions. So that's part of the mission of the department. We feel like giving students global music experiences is important, for their college experience. So most of the time I'm teaching beginners who either don't have any musical background or don't have percussion background. If they do have a musical background, which makes it really fun and challenging at times. So I conduct the orchestra, obviously, and then teach a secondary music methods course and a world music course for the Gen Ed program.
Very good. I know sitting in band in the front, we always used to wonder about the percussionists that they're back there, they're just making the stuff up there, like notes. We don't need no stinking notes. I mean, it's like it looked like always a party back by the percussion section. So
they have to do something to count all those measures of rest, right?
No kidding. I always think about the triangle player that he's sitting there, counts like 150 measures of rest for like ding ding, and then he's gone. So.
So what has your daughter gravitated to in the musical world?
Well, it's interesting having two parents who are musicians and music educators. She's basically around music all the time.
All the time.
So I think what we just begun to realize, when we lived in Brazil last summer for 4 months, and now when we came back, I do a lot of I do a lot of workshops with Brazilian music, and especially with at state music conferences for music educators, how they can integrate Brazilian music into their general music classrooms. So, like this year, I'm doing four state music conferences, and I'm doing the national NAFME concert conference, all virtual this year. So I'm pre-recording my sessions for those. But our daughter is, I don't even notice it, but I'll say, hey, can you play the Agogo pattern for maracatu? And she'll just like do 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 do. So I can actually quote, like, she studied all the things that we did in Brazil. Like we did Afro-Brazilian dance, we did Afro-Brazilian drumming, and she picked up all that, and I just didn't, I don't think I was aware of it. And neither was my wife, but when I play it now, like we kind of have a Brazilian playlist of songs from when we were there. Like she jumps right in. Her Portuguese she can sing all the lyrics.
Wow. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And she just turned 10, so.
Oh, that's even more amazing. Yeah.
A great time for her to be there just to absorb all that in terms of her, her brain development.
Yeah. Do you use African drums at all? I know in our school system, our actual vocal director loved, he had a whole side ensemble of African drumming.
I don't use a lot of African drums now. Actually, my first teaching job at Nicolay High School was a really diverse demographic in terms of the student body. And Milwaukee has a theater dance company. It's called the Coty Dance Company, which is a West African dance and music troupe. And I studied with somebody who was in that group, and we had a teacher at the school who taught West African dance. So we actually had a student ensemble. And I taught the drumming, and then we had dancers. And that was back in like 1997, and we were doing that kind of multicultural stuff, that was authentic West African dance, and so I integrate a little bit into my teaching, but I primarily focus on the Afro-Brazilian stuff because that's really what I know most about.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. Now, you're involved in several as conductor, clinician, adjudicator. Tell us about some of the groups you are involved with.
Currently, I am the music director, conductor of the Holland Area Youth Orchestra. So I've been doing that. This is my second year doing that. And when I was in Goshen, I did the Elkhart Youth Symphony.
What is the age range of the students?
So we have 3 levels, and it's part of it's sort of falls in the umbrella of the Holland Symphony Orchestra. So we have 3 levels of orchestra. So we have the advanced group, which is the Holland Area Youth Orchestra. We have a concert strings group, and then a junior strings. And basically, we do it by ability level, not so much by age range. So we have some high school kids who are in that middle group, that concert strings group. But generally speaking, I would say 8th grade to senior in high school is in our top group, and then it kind of goes down from there. But this semester, because of COVID, we're only doing string orchestra, just like we are at Hope. At Hope, we only have string orchestra, just for safety reasons and for schedules and all kinds of other reasons. Well, room capacity as well.
Tell us a little bit how COVID's impacted you, both personally and professionally.
Personally, it's funny. I'm teaching my life as a college professor. It doesn't feel a whole lot different, to be honest. I do my creative work, and I do my research and my musical activities. Where it's really affected, I think, me in terms of my work is, I don't get to go out and do high school, middle school orchestra clinics, and I don't get to go to state and present at state conferences and meet people and do the things I normally would do in person. I think that's where I felt personally the most impact. But personally too, not being able to see family and travel as much. That's where I feel it. And I know our students feel it too. We at Hope College, our percentage of positive COVID cases is at 0.6%.
Wow.
Which is well below the state average of Michigan and well below the national average, which is like, I don't even know what it's at now, but we've had this crazy spike in everything lately. But I think our students are, one, very appreciative because we're one of the few schools in our area that are still in person. And for our music students, particularly to be making music in person. And, we started our 9th week this week, and our semester ends just before Thanksgiving. So, they basically constructed the semester so students couldn't go home. So once they were on campus, they were going to stay there. And I think that's taken a toll on them because, they don't get to see their families. Unless their families come to campus. But, it's been more stressful that way, I think, and just all the different health and safety protocol that everybody has to follow. And I've seen it, even I think for the professors and some of my colleagues, like we just feel, it's starting to wear on us a little bit as time goes on. But, it's great because we have things, we've done 2 collage concerts at Hope, all the instrumental ensembles. We did one in September and we did one 2 Fridays ago. And then our fall orchestra concert will be November 13th. And everything's been live streamed. So, everybody at Hope, I'm just so appreciative of our administration and all the people that are helping to make those things happen.
So was anything held outside, or have all the concerts been inside?
Everything has been inside. So we have relatively new music building that was opened the year I started at Hope. So it's the Jack H. Miller Center for Musical Arts, and it's got a state-of-the-art HVAC system. So the air exchange, basically, in the whole building, it exchanges air 4 times an hour.
Wow. We
feel really safe.
We're coming up on the LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra, which I guess in theater terms we say you're auditioning for. You're coming in as a guest conductor.
Right.
Tell us a little bit how you got hooked up with them and about the program that you're going to be putting on there.
Well, I think I reached a point in my career I really wanted to have a semi-professional orchestra gig or a professional orchestra gig. I love my students dearly, but there are, I think, for me, some advantages to working with more experienced musicians. And I think I was just searching job boards and for orchestra gigs and music director, conductor positions. And this one came up, and I really felt, I've always felt, because I'm from the Midwest, my career has sort of taken a tour of the Midwest. I feel really committed to community, and I wanted to find a job that was close by, so for me, it's within driving distance. And I feel like if I was going to do something like that, I was going to make a commitment to apply and go through all the steps, and that I wanted it to be a place where I could contribute to the arts life of the community. So that's one of the reasons why I ended up even applying for the position. Other than that, I think it was just something that I had known a few of the musicians who had played in it when I worked in Goshen.
Right.
At the time, there was some crossover there. I didn't even know it at the time. I didn't even know that they had played with LaPorte. I know that they had played with Elkhart, and I had hired them in as ringers for my college orchestra at Goshen for a few times. But I didn't know it. I didn't know that they had a connection with LaPorte. So what I'm really excited about is, this concert was supposed to happen last April.
Right.
And it got, because of quarantine and everything, it got delayed. And then, talking with Tim King, the executive director, we didn't know if it was going to happen, or, we tried to reschedule it for spring, but then it didn't work out for various reasons. And then we finally found a date here, and we had our fingers crossed. We still have our fingers crossed. And the concert that I got assigned, essentially, in terms of the theme, was Pop's concert. So I pitched the idea to Tim and Chuck. Well, why don't we do a Great American Songbook Concert? I have a jazz background as a percussionist. I was in a jazz quartet as an undergrad for a little while, and I love jazz anyway. And I was the kind of kid that grew up, I should have been a child of the 80s, listening to, all the great 80s pop music. But everything I've learned about 80s pop culture, I've learned from my wife, unfortunately. My parents were pretty conservative, and so we didn't listen to pop music in our household. I grew up on watching like the great musicals of like Singing in the Rain, American in Paris, like, everything, all that stuff, like even from comedy too, like Abbott and Costello and Ma and Pa Kettle movies. That was my sort of education in terms of entertainment growing up. And, having those musicals, and, I took dance for a little while too, tap and ballet, when I was little too. My mom thought it was should have been part of my education growing up. And so all those sounds are just in my head, from growing up. And so I love to conduct when I can find opportunities to program, Gershwin or Cole Porter or all that music is just so great. So the theme that we came up with was the Great American Songbook. And, for us, those composers are Gershwin, Irving Berlin, of course, Cole Porter. And we ended up finding that now that when we rescheduled this concert, it was so close to Veterans Day that we thought we should include a piece as a salute to our veterans and our men and women, service women who are active duty as well. So we have a little bit of that. Additionally, we have a guest soloist. Again, I mentioned her before, Deb Bordeaux, coming in, and Deb has an amazing voice. She's had amazing experiences as a classical singer, but she's also has tons of musical theater experience, and so we're going to feature her on a few vocal tunes as well as part of the program. And that'll be something nice too for the audience to hear. And in addition to featuring the orchestra on a few very, very well-known Gershwin and Cole Porter tunes.
The possibility of it being live streamed, so you might have an international audience.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Well, Christopher, we need to probably wrap it up there, though, unfortunately. Christopher Fashun, tell us the date real quick of the concert.
The date is November 7th.
Okay.
7 p.m.
It's 7 p.m. That's LaPorte County Symphony Orchestra. Christopher Fashun is coming in as guest conductor and auditioning for the conductor spot there. He's at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. Thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Larry.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
You've been listening to Art on the Air, and we'd like to thank our guests this week. Art on the Air is heard every Friday at 11 a.m. and rebroadcast Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP and Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. Thanks again to Greg Kovach, WVLP station manager, and Tom Maloney, vice president of radio operations for Lakeshore Public Radio. Underwriters for Art on the Air are Valparaiso University's Brower Museum, our landlord, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments, and Marilyn Levan, arts patron. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant and the National Endowment for the Arts. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at AOTA@brech.com. That's AOTA@brech.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Brechner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the